Hello, welcome to Compelling. I'm Katy Wellesley-Wesley. With 18 years of experience in the art world, ranging from senior positions at blue-chip galleries to startups, I'm now a Paris-based consultant to brands, foundations, artists, and collectors. Thank you for joining me to listen to Compelling, a podcast exploring the intersection of art, culture, and luxury. I'll be interviewing visionary artists, cultural leaders, and brand innovators to find out how storytelling, mastery of craft, and collaboration come together to build community, engage audiences, and shape lasting legacies. Compelling offers listeners fresh perspectives on the ideas and aesthetics shaping luxury businesses and culture today. My guest today is the French conceptual artist Noémie Goudal. Known for her beguiling photographs, film, and installations, she constructs large-scale illusions in real landscapes and then films and photographs them as they burn and dissolve ultimately back into their surroundings. Her work explores how landscapes are formed, transformed, and imagined. The result sits somewhere between photography, cinema, and sculpture, questioning what we think we are seeing and how we perceive the world around us. Noémie Goudal, thank you very much for agreeing to be a guest today on Compelling. You and I we've known each other for a few years, really, since I moved to Paris. And so it's a real privilege and honour to be across from a friend, but also an artist who I have admired long before we were friends.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really glad to be here with you today.
I will start where I tend to start with all guests, which is just to try to understand a little bit of your background. So the environment in which you grew up, whether there was any clue in the child you were for the artist you became today.
So I grew up in Paris, in the south of Paris. I was part of a family that was very artistic, I would say. My dad is an architect. He was working in heritage. So he was making sure that the old churches and castles and, were well renovated, and making sure that the sort of traditional towns of France were, keeping their soul. And my mother was... she was directing a theater. It was a theater that she started to work in quite early in her career, and she stayed there for can't remember, maybe 30 years, something like that.
Wow.
And she made a program that was a very, very good theater program, very contemporary. And I guess I didn't really realize it when I was a child, but it's only perhaps in my mid-20s or 30s that I realized how radical her program was and how aligned I was with, what she did there. And my grandparents were both artists, visual artists. So I guess I grew up in this environment. Obviously, at first, I wanted to do something completely different and completely radically different. And then that's why I left. When I was 19, I left to live in London. I guess I was attracted by photography. For me was something very, very different that nobody had done before in my family. It was my little haven. And I started when I was 15. It was like a hobby, like a Wednesday afternoon, little hobby that I was doing with my friends. And then it became like a sort of obsession. Like at first we had the darkroom for like an hour or two, and then the lady from the darkroom gave me a spare key, and I stayed until really late in the evening. And she said, "Yeah, you can process your pictures as long as you want. It's fine, as long as you leave it clean." And So that was in the late 90s. London for me was like I went there a few times just for like a day trip, and I thought it was the energy for me was absolutely amazing. I love that. I felt like in Paris, people were looking at you a lot, and in London, I felt like nobody cared. It was a pressure off for me. And I guess I was really attracted by the city, and it really changed my way of, I don't know, it just made me feel like I had the space to be, what I really wanted to be.
So you sought to study in London?
And then I that's the reason why I finally moved to London, is because I got into St. Martin's and St. Martin's schools, and which was absolutely amazing. If you think of East London in the early 2000s, it was there were a lot of empty fields with a lot of space, and Paris hasn't been destroyed at all during the war, so it's a very perfect little pearl. When I arrived in London, there were so many pockets that were completely still derelict in the middle of the city. And somehow, as a student, I felt like there was something about how can you rebuild those spaces, and then it's just the fact that there is space, for the brain to feel.
But going back to your parents' professions, your father being an architect and your mother being so involved in the theatre, so that kind of idea to create a mise en scène within a ruin, those are the first works that I was familiar of yours, which was those, they appeared to be waterfalls in sort of derelict spaces, but actually they were constructions. And I suppose for listeners who may not know your work intimately, how would you describe the work and the technique and the method?
I guess if we consider the beginning of my practice as being at the Royal College, and the photograph that you mentioned called Cascade is could potentially be sort of beginning. This was when I was about 25, 26, and I had done many things with photography, so I guess I was a little bit I wanted to try something different and something that I wanted to push it a little bit further. I guess I was a little bored, and that's why I started to build things. And also, I guess the Royal College was a very good, and St. Martin's as well, obviously, because I was not in fine art. I was in graphic design before. It was a good course for me because it was very free. I was extremely free to do whatever I wanted and to navigate between all the workshops and there were many possibilities to create. And I guess there I really learned how to organize an image, or how I can almost work on the production. So preparing a shoot, having, meeting with people who would come and who would start to build things, or who would pose for a photograph, and I would, buy props and stuff. So it kind of taught me how to, not just to take picture in the street or of my friends or of my travels like I was doing before, but to really organize a photograph. So I guess that was a good learning for me. And then when I started to work on, slowly but surely on images that were composed and more conceptual, and sort of taking, for example, I wanted to work on this theme, and then how can I convey this idea into my image instead of taking pictures outside and then talking about what it means. It's quite the other way around. So that was my sort of passage at the St. Martin's. And then when I moved to the Royal College, I started to remove the people in the pictures, which was an important step. I realized that they were absolutely not necessary, and they were taking too much space, and that the installation that I would build could completely suffice on their own. So that I did, and my tutors were very good. They knew it from the day one, but they didn't tell me. They made me
arrive at the conclusion.
Yeah, exactly, like a good psychologist.
But I've heard you describe, so when you have the frame or the construction, that you often you deliberately you leave evidence for a viewer to spot, and that is almost a sort of substitute for the person in the picture, so that you can understand some sense of scale, or you can imagine that you're in the picture because there is this kind of representative of the real world, something that you can kind of hang on to.
Yeah.
So in a way, you're still inviting a human presence, but it's more of a dialogue with the viewer rather than to spectate a participant.
Yeah, completely, exactly. It's more when you leave traces of the construction. For me, it's really about how you can involve the viewer into this very construction, into the and I think it's also showing. If we're going back to a question about how you would define the beginning of this, of this practice, then I think showing the construction, showing the set even as much as the illusion of what the set wants to say is as important to me. If you think of the picture, the waterfall, the cascade, you can very clearly see that it's not a cascade. Obviously, that's not the point. The point is to say, with a very simple sheet of plastic, can I change the perspective of a landscape, or can I prolong the landscape into something different with one simple intervention?
So, okay, again, for those who haven't seen it, the Cascade series was within derelict buildings, the use of these long pieces of that sort of sheet plastic that you would make a water slide out of, but it's transparent. But it was lit in such a way and sort of folded and manipulated so that it looked like falling water. But all of this was done live. I mean, as you say, you're not using Photoshop. You're not manipulating the image digitally afterwards. You're manipulating it in real life, in real time, and then photographing that. So this is a really vital question in your work. Why is that important?
I think the idea of the expedition and it's almost like if you have the residue of a performance or the document of a performance or something that has happened, your body engages with, or your body, your spirit, your soul engages with the gesture of the making. When if you have something photoshopped, obviously you can maybe think of the person in front of his computer, but it's not the same. So especially the films, they need a much bigger team. So it's also an excuse to do something with people, to have a sort of, an experience for a couple of days. We are going to build something and then in 5 minutes destroy it with fire. And well, actually, it's not only a few days. It takes 6 months to get a film ready, and then it gets destroyed in a few minutes. And I like that my work is an excuse to create those moments.
So then, could you say that the art is really the act of making and that collaborative process, and then the film or the photograph that's left behind is really evidence of it having happened?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I guess it's a little bit of both, because I wouldn't have the set in the gallery, for example, as a result of the work. At the moment, I might do in the future, but at the moment, I feel like the work is still the record of what has been made. Much recently, I realized that maybe the making or the movement of the making, like for example, if you think of the cascade and the first image, it wouldn't probably be that interesting to see us climbing in the trees and putting ropes and hanging this tarpaulin in the forest. But now I feel like there are many things that can be. The movement is interesting. The movement of this kind of very meditative movement of making interests me more and more. So that's why I started to work with the performance, which was shown in theaters and as a live work. So you would, as a spectator, come and take a ticket, sit for an hour, and then you would enjoy the work then. Obviously, in the performances the performance that I've done, we had films. But we also had live performers, which obviously you can't do in a museum show. So okay, let's move on to talking about Anima. That was your first performance kind of collaboration, and that was in 2022, and first shown at the Collection Lambert in Avignon. Yeah. I was fortunate to be there. I've never seen anything quite like it. So firstly, it was open air. So let's say that. And we were in the courtyard at Collection Lambert, where there was a construction of metal, screens, water sort of spray that, was only revealed sort of as we went. And then there was live music. And then you had this incredible aerial performance as well. And the whole thing was directed by Maëlle Poésy. We've gone from photography and these constructions through film, which is also, we'll come back to that, but that was only
around 2019 that you began making
Yeah.
film. And then all of it coming together for 2022. So how did that idea begin?
So I had a show at the Les Rencontres d'Arles in 2022, and the director, Christoph Wisner, asked me if I could potentially work on the performance. And then I've contacted Maëlle Poésy, who is a longtime friend, and who is a play director, as you said, and she's now running the theatre of Dijon. I said to her, look, would you like to work on something with me? And, we've wanted to work together for a long time, so it was, a good opportunity. And from one thing to another, we ended up with this quite a large-scale performance, and we were lucky enough to get the help of Monde Nouveau, which was a grant that only happened once. They helped 260 projects very generously. Thanks to this grant and thanks to her being the new director of the Théâtre de Dijon, we got some fundings from that, and we ended up working on a very large-scale performance. So the idea was to mix a video, to mix a performer, and to mix also backdrops that would disintegrate on stage. Yeah. And we wanted the music to be really part of the sound and the music. The sound is really important because everything has been done in post-production. And then the music, which was done by Chloé. And I've been working with Chloé for many years now, and as a DJ, she had to learn how to create waves and how to work with the bodies so they go into phases of going up and then down and in Anima, because the backdrops are disintegrating very slowly, it's extremely slow and meditative, and we wanted the sound to recreate a narrative, to recreate a rhythm, which we did, and she was amazing for that. And also she's been working a lot with Maëlle. I mean, we've been working all together on Maëlle and I, we've been working hand in hand on every step. But Maëlle is very obsessed with the rhythm. That's really her thing. Like everything in Anima is very, very strict partition. So the music is also, she's been working with Chloé towards the end to make it really, really, really sharp on the, every single second is very, considered. And
as you said, I mean, you see these kind of sprinkling system that kind of starts to put water onto the paper backdrop, and so it starts to disintegrate in real time as part of the performance, as you said. So there's this kind of element of chance always in a work like that. You don't know quite how the paper's going to fall, or where the water will stream first. There are these kind of competing elements as well visually, that some of which you have control over and others that you don't. But the rhythm is the thing that kind of brings the whole thing together. It was extraordinary. And then the aerial performer, I mean, this also, she was moving in the rhythm with the music, hanging from bars, lifting herself up as if it was nothing. This was also extraordinary to watch.
Yeah, it's been really amazing to work with. So her name is Chloé Moglia, and she calls herself suspensive. It's a new form of art, I suppose, that she created. She's been working on it for years now. So it's suspending herself in order to, I guess, catch a moment of tension, to explore the matter around her. So when she moves very slowly. It's almost like she's exploring the thin envelope around her body of air, or maybe of something else. It was interesting, actually, because when we met, we realized that we were reading the same people, or we were researching on the same thing, even though our practices were very different. When you see her, because she's so strong, obviously, because that's, she has to hang in the air for 20 minutes, which nobody can do. So she has to get into a form of trance in order to do that. But her work is not about the strength at all. No. It's about something almost like a sort of a spiritual exercise to stay away for a moment and to study something. So study something that is deeper than we can see or we can feel directly. And you can really feel that when you see her.
This season of Compelling is presented in partnership with Cahiers d'Art, the legendary Paris publisher founded in 1926. For a century, Cahiers d'Art has collaborated with icons like Picasso, Duchamp and Calder, and continues today with leading voices such as Ellsworth Kelly, Philip Perino, Arthur Jaffa and Rosemary Truckle. Cahiers d'Art is also the home of the legendary Picasso Catalogue Raisonné, the definitive 33-volume record of Picasso's work and one of the most important art publications of the 20th century. Beyond publishing, Cahiers d'Art is also a gallery on Rue de Dragon in Paris. You can discover more at cahierdart.com. Thinking a little bit about the genesis of projects, you've covered paleoclimatology and you're thinking a lot on a kind of planetary level and across deep time rather than just the small percentage of time that people have been around and humanity has been on the planet. So what draws you to those kind of vast subjects?
So how do I start? I guess learning is amazing, isn't it? I mean, learning things that you don't know at all is something that I, like recently, I've been asked to do a project. Artangel asked me to work on the project. Artangel is a British organization who worked with artists on large-scale projects. And I wanted to work on something different because I was working on paleoclimatology for many years. And then I wanted to learn more about the cycle of water. I didn't know anything about it. And I guess I started to, in order to, know a little bit more about it, this time, every time is a different story, but this time I started to listen to podcasts and trying to figure out exactly what part of the cycle of water I wanted to learn more about. And then that's, I listened to a series of scientists talking about it. And I guess one thing that really caught my attention was this idea that the water is bringing elements like mineral salts from one place of the planet into other territories, and therefore the water is nurturing the land. What is interesting to me in my projects is that if we're going back to the process, is that I read a lot of things and I listen to podcasts, or I talk to people, scientists, or I read articles, and then I create a lot of I do a lot of tests in the studios. Instinctively, I want to work with this material, or I want to make something melt, or I want to print on something that will dry and leave traces, or I don't know. So it's like I read like my scientific research, then I digest them, and then suddenly there is something in the studio that I'm working on that clicks with the research. But sometimes it's not the research that I'm thinking about. Sometimes it's something that I read. For example, that's a good example of how I make things click in the studio. Sometimes it doesn't, because I guess when I say click, it's that I'm looking for. So if you think of the scientific research on one side, the visual interpretation, and then I guess I want them both to make a third entity appear. Something that would a reflection that would bring you somewhere else. And also that third thing, I want to be surprised by it. I don't want to create it myself. I want to, suddenly there is something, there are two things that click, and then you're like, oh my God, I didn't think of that, and suddenly it appears. I guess that's maybe a sort of the phantom of my practice as a photographer. As a photographer, you go in the world and you photograph things, and then you have to work with a lot of things that you can't control and that you pick from the world. And I guess I like that as well. I like to be also surprised by what I discover and what I see. And this element of surprise is really, really important to me.
If I've understood correctly, because you're constantly reading and researching, sometimes an idea might sit with you for maybe years, and then later it kind of comes back to you and you reinterpret it, or it aligns with something else, a new piece of research. Are you relying on memory for all of this kind of bank of information, or do you actually have a system? When you read something interesting, are you making a note of it somewhere?
Well, actually, that's a very, very good question, because at the moment I'm working on a big monography, and we wanted to include a lot of images in the book to make it very much alive and very much about, showing the research, showing
the process,
the process, exactly. Yeah. And I had to go through my notes, which I never really organize. I mean, I guess I had folders of things like, ideas for new
but like,
new works,
or the link to the article or the podcast or this, because I mean, I speak for myself, but I sometimes look at people that I've known for a really long time across the room, and if the pressure's on me to introduce them to somebody else, I have a moment of thinking, oh God, what's their name? And and that's just with names of old friends. I mean, if it was down to me to actually be able to kind of call up, like, I read that article in the New York Times, or I read this, or that was that podcast that was on this channel, or this is a lot to try to retain.
Completely, and I'm not very good at it, and I need to, that's exactly at the moment while I'm doing this research for the monography, that I'm thinking that I really need to work on a system that is a bit more perenne. Because so far I thought that if it's really important, then I would remember. But it's very true that working on a system that, like an archival system of research, is extremely important, and it's something that I need to really. I'm saying to myself that I'm going to focus on the next few months, for sure.
Okay, so you've mentioned the monograph, that this is a big forthcoming publication. When is it going to be released?
So it should be released next year in 2027, in April. Well, at least one big show in America, which will be at the Norton Museum in West Palm Beach in Florida, and which should tour to 3 other museums in America as well.
Same show.
The same
touring.
show, yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, they will change slightly, because all the venues are different, and
yes.
I like to do site-specific exhibitions, but roughly the same concept. And I wanted to do a monography for a long time, and I guess this. I worked with the curator Lauren Richmond, and she suggested, we have a budget to do a book that could be potentially a monography. And I thought, okay, and I actually had a grant from ADAGP that I got last year. So ADAGP is basically in France, it's the company that collects the rights for authors.
Of course, okay.
And they also have grants in lots of different grants, and I got the one for the first monography. Because I did books before, but they were, on very sort of isolated projects. And for me, this work is for every artist, I suppose, when you work on your first monography, it's a very big deal. I realized that I will cover 17 years of work, so that's not little. It's a lot of years of research and tests and photographies and videos and the performance and sculptures also. So it's a very long process. And
it's almost, art books made by artists. It's almost like an artwork in its own right. It's a kind of, and it's an artistic project in its own right, for sure.
It's a very complicated exercise, especially this one, because it has to be artistic, but also an artistic project. A project in itself, as you said. But it also has to be a tool, because it has to be a scientific object. Like if you want to study, this work or this work, you could potentially pick up the book and learn about it. So there is still something about how a form of mediation of the work that wasn't really in my previous books, which were very much artist books. What I did is I put up a team in place. I work with, Lauren Richmond, who is the curator at the Norton. I work with Eva Pruto, who is an art critic. So I did ask her if she wanted to be the editorial, and she said yes, which is wonderful. So we might have some of her own text, but she will also help me curate or commission other authors. And she she's also helping me with choosing the images, because there are thousands of images. We will need to get rid of a lot of them, and sometimes it's a very difficult job. I felt that I couldn't do it, on my own. I needed an extra, somebody who would help me cut, and who would also help me to recreate a narrative. Because if you think of a monography, it's quite an interesting exercise also because it's revisiting works.
Yes.
If you think of a series that I would have done 15 years ago, you can only pick one image because it will dialogue with the series that I've done 5 years ago very well, only this one image. And this new dialogue has to be created now. In that sense, it's a very big project because it's really recreating what the work is about, and the in 10 years time or 15 years time, if I work on another monography, it'll be again another look, another scope of the work.
And are Aide à la Santé, your long-standing gallery, are they involved with the monograph as well, or is it important actually that the commercial gallery sits apart from the objectives and the process of making a monograph?
There might be at some point. I think that I'm not, at the moment, I'm very much at the beginning of classifying all the images and making sure that the graphic designers have, something to work on. We are at this process, and I think they will be involved a bit later down the line. And I haven't mentioned the graphic designers also. I'm working with Spassky Fischer. It's the first time that I work with them. From what I've seen from their previous project, they can handle the juxtaposition of images really, really well. And the narrative that I was, mentioning before, I know they can do that on every single page. Also because we're going to have to mix 5 different types of images. So you have the final works, the final images, so the final JPEGs of the photographs and the screenshots of the films. You have the iconography, so all the images that were sort of inspiration for the work, so they can be models, scientific models, or they can be diagrams, or they can be things like that. They're all the images from the tests, which are very interesting to me because they really see all the bits that we're doing in the studio that were not successful, but that sort of stay there as maybe for future projects. So those are also very important, and they show the life of the studio. They are all the making of, so that's the picture of how we build things that are all the things that are outside of the frames.
And I think that, if I may, is so interesting for people picking up the book as well, because I think that sort of lift of the curtain to actually really understand, so it was like that. Oh, I see. Oh, and the tide was coming in, or whatever it is. This is fascinating actually for people who are otherwise, in a gallery setting, they're just presented with the final article. So yeah, I mean,
as you said, it's really, really important to give them a space, but you don't. At the same time, it's also about creating a balance, so you don't show too much of the tricks. And the 5th type of image would be the pictures of the sculptures, the terrella, which is also quite another type of image. And the role of the graphic designer will be to bring together all those different typologies of images and making sure that the final works stand out or at least are very well differentiated from the other images. And that's a huge challenge for them.
Of course. In 2024, you were nominated for the Prix Marcel Duchamp, which is one of the, if not the most prestigious contemporary art prizes in France. Full stop. For people in the UK, it's kind of like France's answer to the Turner Prize. And that was held at the Centre Pompidou. I wonder, just any of your reflections on that, really, about the experience, about, being nominated. And then I guess I'm interested also in whether you feel that you're treated any differently, whether the impact of the art establishment has there been a real shift and you discern it?
Yeah, completely. Huge.
So what there's before Prix Marcel Duchamp, and then there's after.
Yeah, definitely. I think there are many things that come into this. Even though I moved back to Paris 13 years ago, I studied in London. So my network was in London. And I was still somehow, it's not that I wasn't really integrated, but when you didn't study in a country, you don't have the same link. So I guess I knew more curators in London, or I knew more artists. And for me, being nominated for the Prix Marcel Duchamp was also bringing me back to the French. Since I'm a French artist, even though I lived in London for many years, it's where I live now in France. So it was, for me, it was really important to say, okay, now finally I made my space here, which really wasn't obvious at first. And also because now I still have curators from all around the world who contact me saying, I've seen your work at Prix Marcel Duchamp. Would you like to, work on? And that was 2 years ago, so it has definitely had a huge impact. The year of the Prix Marcel Duchamp in 24 was tough. I'm not going to lie. It was very, very tough for me because they tell you in January that you are nominated, and then you have to create. Well, you don't have to create new works, but in my case, I kind of had to, because I had the show in Arles in 2022, which was kind of quite close. I showed most of my most recent work, so I had to create
a new body of work.
And the show opened early September, so everything had to be finished by July. So sort of 6 months. Time is ticking, like tick tock every day. So it was quite scary for me to. But I had an amazing team in my studio, and we made it happen. We hired a producer who came to the studio and helped us put together a proposal. And I had some ideas, but they were clearly not very well defined at the beginning, and we had to do a lot of testing on quite dangerous materials, I suppose, or very experimental with the explosions and with the melting of the plastic. And we made it happen. We did the shoot in June. We did the post-production kind of straight away, and the sound in August, in the middle of the summer, and everything was finished for September. So it was tough. It was really tough, but obviously it was absolutely worth it.
Yeah. Just to conclude, because I'm interested in the way that you reflect on the Prix Marcel Duchamp as well. So you've said that it helped you internationally, that you're getting calls from curators who probably would never have encountered your work had it not been for the show at the Pompidou. All of us, I suppose, have varying levels at different times of some kind of self-doubt. Does being nominated for a prize like that, does it change?
I'm always thinking about the next project and how I will evolve and learn from my mistakes and do better for the next project, or do not necessarily better, but that's not the right word, but how I can go further in the research or go further in the practical research in my studio, working with materialities and expanding my fields of research. And I'm always doubting of how the next project will be. So I guess this hasn't really changed, and I don't think that anything will change that, or I hope not, because I guess that for me, when I'll stop doubting is probably when I'll stop working.
A little more about our sponsor. In 2026, Cahiers d'Art celebrates its centennial, 100 years at the heart of modernism. To mark the occasion, Cahiers d'Art will stage a global programme of exhibitions at the Musée Picasso in Paris, the MoMA in New York, the Guggenheim Collection in Venice, and many more museums worldwide. Alongside these, a landmark centennial book and new editions of the Historic Review will honour a century of creativity. You can discover more at cahierdart.com. There are a few questions that I ask to everybody. One is, whether you have an awareness of any great influences on your work or your practice. We've already spoken about your parents. But outside of that, outside of those relationships, do you have any other big influences?
I remember it's still in the family, but my grandparents were, there is something about if you do something, do it right to the bottom of it, like never stop before, which can be a huge inconvenience when something is not working. I'm quite obsessed about finishing things or getting to the bottom of things. And I guess that's for me also a drive. That's something that really helped me in my work. Because a lot of what I do is quite complicated, with all the optical illusions and the making things and traveling with, carrying the equipment, carrying that. It can be, I could give up a lot of the time, but I've got this thing from my childhood, like, don't give up, finish it, And I think that's something that is very, very strong for me. For example, I don't really believe in talent at all. I only believe in work and in this kind of obsession. And I think that's really what drives me. And in terms of my, I think that maybe my real influence were probably in theater, actually. The plays that I've seen when I was a teenager that really, I think if I think of Sidi Larbi Cherkaoui or Pina Bausch or Mauthauser or plays that were quite radical and quite where I guess about the emotions as well of how you translate a story through emotions and visually very impacting, obviously. And then much later on, I had the chance to travel to many places such as Marfa or Naoshima, or I've just been 2 weeks ago, I was in Mexico and I traveled to Xilitla, to Los Pozas, which are a surrealist garden made by Edward James in the 70s. And it was really amazing, amazing work. For me, traveling to places where I can enjoy art in a very specific way, and I know it stays there for many years. For me, it's a very important gesture, and I think that really has changed my way of creating, even though I didn't have the chance to work on something like that. But it's something that, at least as a spectator, something that is really important. How the journey, your own journey of your own travel, your own body, your own trajectory is somehow making a little bit of the work. I love that relationship to the work.
Going back to something you just said, that you believe in hard work and not in talent. Really? I mean, I'm fascinated by that. I mean, actually, I have a friend who was a professional football player. We had a similar conversation. He sort of, I mean, obviously you have to have some aptitude, was more or less what he was saying. But in the end, it's about reps. It's deciding that you're going to put in the hard graft, and it's harder than people imagine. But actually, with enough effort, anybody can be a professional sports player, kind of his sentiment. Do you really think the same can be said about art? That anybody who decides and just and works hard?
I think, well, if you think of the artists that you love, or if you think of how they work, they all work really, really, really hard, right? I've never really met an artist, or maybe I'm completely wrong, but I haven't really heard about an artist who would just go to their studio like 2 minutes a day and just do something and that would be sold for millions. I don't, maybe it's about an obsession. You try again and again and again and again. I guess a lot of artists do have that. But talent, I don't really know what it. I don't really believe that artists have sort of a special thing from birth or anything. I think that's not true. I think it's about sort of coincidence, like who you meet and who is the person who is going to help you go into an art school, for example, when you're not coming from this background at all, and who is going to give you the strength to not only go to an art school but also just making a work, or who is going to give you this space in your head to be able to feel like you can do that.
Perhaps the thing that you do have, not necessarily from birth, but that you have developed in yourself and that anybody successful in any field has, is a kind of conviction to keep going. You know, that this is something that I'm not going to, I'm not going to relinquish that idea until I feel like, as you described, until I've got to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
But that sort of pursuit of the truth and that decision to keep going, that definitely sets apart successful people or successful artists from the rest of humanity, who kind of it's a bit of a muddle of all of those things, I suppose.
Maybe it's a very, very strong desire also. Really strong desire to you really, really want to do something. You want to finish it, and it's stronger than anything else.
Yeah. Is there a favorite restaurant that you go to? It doesn't have to be in Paris.
Anywhere.
Maybe one in Paris and one elsewhere.
One in Paris. That's I have a few. I like the Orion, that you know.
Yes.
Because it's near my studio, and it's local, and it's very good food, and it's simple, and there's people from the area, and I guess I feel like every time I eat there, I feel very lucky, to be honest, to be part of this town, part of this area, and with amazing people around. And elsewhere, there are a lot. I don't think I've eaten that well in Japan. I think it's my top favorite food in the world. I can't remember the name of this restaurant, but my gallerist Charlie Fellows offered me a meal in a Japanese restaurant, which was completely hidden. I think he had a friend who he asked to give some recommendation, and it was a door, and you would enter, and it had only a couple of seats, and we were sitting literally in front of the chef, and I've eaten the best food, I think, in my whole life.
I'll have to ask Charlie.
Exactly.
But if there were no budgetary constraints, is there a dream project?
Yes, I think I would like to do a garden in a dream world. I know it takes a lot of years. It would require a big budget because buying plants and having it. So I guess that's a dream. Also because it's almost I would look at it as a network that is not only that has a movement for the time of the artwork, but that has a movement that evolves with years and seasons. And it's almost like an image that you create, but you have to think of it as what it will look like throughout 1 year, and then what it will look like throughout 5, 10, 20 years. So it's in terms of landscape and time. I think it's a fascinating project, but it's obviously not directly linked to my practice, but maybe one day I'll have the strength and the chance to work on that.
And advice. So you mentioned that your grandfather, was it your grandfather or your grandparents, had said, don't give up, keep going. So maybe that's the advice. But,
yes.
But advice that you've received, and then conversely, advice that you would give.
I guess to a young artist, what I often say if I have a group of students, like if I do a workshop or something like that, I would really encourage them to be truthful to their own interest, because if you think of, they are representing the new generation, and we're not going to tell them what to work on because we don't know what the future will be, and I guess in a way they know better than us, and in a way to look deep down into their guts and not to listen to our generation too much, because we can help on technical things and how to get organized, or how to think outside of the box, or you think further. Why not? But in the subject matter, I think they are the ones who are teaching us now. So they need to really, if they want to work on a subject that seems quite peculiar, then if they really think that deep down, I feel like they need to really pursue, because they are the ones who need to surprise us now.
This is sort of related because you've just made me think of it with the sort of the current generation. So much of your work is research, or it begins with research anyway. And you talked even about having brought other people in, like Eva's come in, your curator friend who's editing your book, has helped you to organize research, and other people have done that for you. Now, of course, there are AI agents who can help you research. Do you ever use them? Would you, now when you were trying to remember, that thing in that place, would you put it into ChatGPT, or are you?
Yeah, completely. I use it all the time, but he, I don't know, told me some big mistakes on a few things. So I'm not really ready to fully rely on it. No. Although on, small things like, I don't know, I was researching recently, if you drop one drop of water from 3.5 meters above the ground, what would be the diameter of the
splash?
The splash. That's something I need to know. I needed to know for a project, and that they could tell me.
Amazing.
That kind of thing, more technical, I suppose. But for the research, I did try. If you were Noémie Goudal and you would work on a new project, what title you would have? It would always really be really, really bad. So we're not quite there yet, I think, for the.
No, I was just curious. And then, other than the monograph, which obviously is a big project building up for next year, what's going on right now in the studio? What are you working towards?
So I'm opening a show at Le Portique in Le Havre, which will run through the summer and through the Impressionist Festival and the Un été au Havre, which are two important festivals in Normandy. And it's really exciting because I'm going to show the story of Fixity, which was the project that I showed in London
for Artangel.
For Artangel,
yeah.
And we are going to show it onto a few different floors, and it's going to be slightly different. I'm trying to make it also even for me. I like to experiment on every show, so it's going to be the same films, the same screens, but a tiny, slightly different system.
With the element of water?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
With the drips. So that's exciting for us at the studio. And then the show after would be at the Pola Foundation in Japan.
Of course, yeah.
And then we are working towards the big show next year at the Norton, which is we're already starting now on the scenography and the choice of the works. And
Noémie Goudal, on this note, first thing on a Monday morning, thank you very much for coming to the studio.
Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure, and the work is so complex and terrifically interesting, and I've really enjoyed hearing all of your stories and your reflections, forthcoming projects. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for your so well prepared, and I guess you knew the work for a long time. So it's great to be able to talk to you about it.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Compelling. I've been overwhelmed by encouragement and positivity since beginning this podcast. If you'd like to support, please share, follow, and subscribe wherever you access your podcasts. It really helps the show to grow. Thank you for listening to Compelling.